Welcome to the Israel Daily News Podcast. I'm your host, Shanna Fold, and I'm here to give you the headlines so you can get caught up quickly. You're listening, so you're already on top of your game. Survive and thrive, people. Knowledge is the best weapon. Today is Tuesday, June 15th, 2021 in the Gregorian calendar, and the 5th of Tammuz, 5781 in the Hebrew calendar. Now, let's get to the news. Israel's health ministry has entirely dropped the need for indoor mask wearing as of today. The news comes out today. This is the last of the major coronavirus regulations Israel has in place. Today, the number of infected people with COVID-19 is next to zero. There are a couple of exceptions to the mask rule. Workers who help the elderly and are not vaccinated will need to wear masks, and those en route to a quarantine or travelers on a flight will need to wear a mask as well. Kids between 12 and 15 in Israel started getting vaccinated last Sunday, so that also helps the school systems stay COVID safe. Yesterday, we talked about Israel's new government, which was sworn in on Sunday. Today, party members made their first major decision. It was an approval for a controversial nationalist flag march today, Tuesday, in the Old City. It was happening as we wrote this very script. The IDF and Israeli police have stepped up security in the West Bank as Hamas and the Palestinian Authority warned of violence if the march went ahead. Although Israeli analysts believe that it's unlikely Hamas will fire rockets, they did warn of launching balloons carrying fire and explosives into Israeli territory. And that is exactly what happened. Now, this is not new. This happens all the time, that terrorists in Gaza send over balloons, they strap them with explosive devices, and when they get to the other side, they detonate, usually causing fires. The analysts predicted it, and they were right. A number of fires blazed in southern Israel near the Gaza border. The fire department says 10 fires were sparked by balloons sent by terrorists on the other side of the border. But that isn't the end of it. Clashes between Palestinian protesters and Israeli defense forces are happening now. One Palestinian man has already been shot in the leg and is suffering light injuries, according to the Times of Israel. Palestinian News says 17 were injured and 2 were already arrested. The clashes began even before the march started. Now, if you're thinking about a march that I mentioned to you on Thursday, you're not wrong. There was a small procession Thursday carried out near the Damascus Gate of the Old City, which is the gateway into the Muslim quarter. Itamar Ben-Gvir went ahead with his supporters and did a march Thursday, though it contradicted what police officers were asking of him, which was to stay away and try not to incite the Arab community. Itamar Ben-Gvir is a member of Israeli parliament, a right-wing member at that. The Jerusalem Day March, or Yom Yerushalayim, as it's called in Hebrew, is a day of parading and excitement for Jews who celebrate capturing Jerusalem in the 1967 war and claim it as the capital. So they celebrate that. By the way, Yom Yerushalayim is actually my birthday. I was born on that day. The march goes all the way through the city of Jerusalem and into the Old City. People hold flags, cheer, they get really pumped up about it. There's music. It's fun. Fun for the Jews. Palestinians often see it as incitement. They believe Jerusalem is their capital and that the Jews stole it from them. I can't speak for every Palestinian, but this is the common narrative. East Jerusalem is mostly inhabited by Palestinians, with some Jews living in the area, and West Jerusalem is mostly all Jews. In the two-state solution concept, West Jerusalem would belong to Israel as its capital, and East Jerusalem would belong to the Palestinians for its future state. Currently, there's controversy over some property in the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah, where about 4 Palestinian families are in a never-ending lawsuit and legal battle with private Jewish organizations that claim they own the land and they have the deed to prove it. The Jewish organizations want the Palestinians to either pay them rent or get out. This erupted on the international stage in early May and triggered an eruption of violence between Hamas and Israeli defense forces. The international community really got heavily involved in this, calling for an end to Palestinian evictions, though these were not state run evictions. The rockets first started raining down on Jews during their celebratory march on Jerusalem Day, and that turned the festive day into a day of torture. People crouched down on the sides of streets, they covered their children's bodies with their own bodies, and many want a redo. They want a redo of this day that was supposed to be fun and ended up in rocket fire. They tried to get one Thursday, but only a small procession took place with Ben Gvir at the head. Today, the full march came through. Violent threats from Hamas were taken as warnings by Israeli police officials. The U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem has banned government employees from entering the Old City and is encouraging U.S. citizens to remain aware. Though the march typically passes through the Damascus Gate into the Muslim quarter, police have ordered that it instead pass through the Jaffa Gate to hopefully avoid conflict. The new public security minister, Omer Bar-Lev, stated that the police are well prepared to maintain public safety, but the Arab parties in parliament worry that the march will reignite violence. We spoke with police volunteers who surveyed the area. They say many streets in Jerusalem are closed off. Marchers are now dancing in the streets. Right-wingers say Israel cannot let Hamas dictate to them where they raise their flag and how. They say that's not how sovereignty works. Left-wingers say there are parts of the city that are equally Jerusalem and could be used, as advised by police, as an alternate route that would not be bulldozing through Palestinian areas. For example, marching through the Jaffa Gate in the Jewish quarter instead of the Damascus Gate in the Muslim quarter. Let us know what you think about this story. Both sides of the argument are interesting and engaging, and I'd like to know what you think about this because this is really a good conversation starter. Hey guys, I'm getting great feedback from podcast listeners on Instagram this week especially, and I'm loving it. Loving it. I love getting your emails and direct messages on Instagram. This week I got messages from a handful of podcast subscribers saying that they're loving the show. It also helps that we got a great boost from CBS New York reporter Lisa Rosner. Our story aired multiple times over the course of 24 hours, even though she told me she thought it was only going to air once. The producers must have liked her explanation of the new Israeli government, which had my voice and face in it and some of my expertise and advice. Because the episode aired on CBS 2 at 11 p.m., 6:30 a.m., and even 6:30 p.m. the following day. So I think the producers must have liked it. That's pretty huge for us. A lot of people wrote in to say that they saw it. People contacted my mom. It was very exciting. Rosner added in my title as the host of the Israel Daily News podcast. Okay, how cool is that for our news organization? She also highlighted that I am returning to Israel as a citizen for the first time and asked me what I expect to feel in the country with a new prime minister. I'm going to add the whole segment to Instagram today and Facebook today. I'm also adding in a few extra stories and commentary to today's show. Let me know, you guys, if this is something that you like. Do you just want the top 5 stories cut and dry with no background or explainers? I'm hoping to hear some feedback from you because I'm getting lots of great feedback from people saying that they like the way that I explain things and they like that when I give the background. I'm also getting great feedback about my ebook called Produce Something: How to Overcome Feeling Overwhelmed and Start Your Own Project. It's a great little guide that I wrote up from my experience of starting a project, i.e. this podcast, how you should actually start it, and also some tips for your mental health as an entrepreneur and creator. I definitely give some feel-good pep talks in there too. The link is in our central link in the show notes. You can buy it for yourself, or you could buy the ebook for someone that you know who needs a kick in the ass to start that project that he or she has been thinking about or talking about but not actually starting. It's $10, and the proceeds go right back into funding the Israel Daily News podcast. Trust me on that. I eat, sleep, and breathe this show, okay? I wake up and think about it. I go to sleep and think about it. I eat and think about it. Everything I do is about this show. So if you want to buy a book, just know where that money's going. If you are getting caught up on your Israel Daily News, send over a monthly contribution at anchor.fm/Israel Daily News/support. Subscribers will get a handwritten thank you note to let you know how thrilled we are to have your support. Thank you so much for your interest in being up to date on Israeli affairs, Israeli politics, or world politics. We have one central link in the show notes, which you can click on and it'll take you to the page where you too can make a contribution and feel good knowing that you're supporting independent journalism. You can also support us by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. 2, you can share the show with a friend. And 3, you can follow us on social media at israeldaily.news as well as Shanna Fuld. That's SHANNAFULD. My name has 2 N's in it, and I'm very sensitive about that. So, we have a new prime minister in Israel, and with him comes a wife. The media is now highlighting her, so here's a little information about Gilat Bennett, wife of Naftali Bennett. Gilat grew up in Kfar Uriah, a moshav, or community near Beit Shemesh, and later served as an educational officer in the paratroopers brigade. She met Naftali Bennett there, who had already completed his army service at the time and was studying at Hebrew University in Jerusalem. The two married after a year of meeting in compliance with Naftali's Orthodox observance. The couple had lived in Jerusalem, a settlement in the West Bank, and now they live in Ra'anana with their 4 children. Ra'anana is a city north of Tel Aviv. Gilat is no stranger to the harsh environment of Israeli politics. She's even received some criticism for being involved in her husband's career. In 2019, she accused Benjamin Netanyahu of being corrupt, causing the Netanyahu family to turn against her. With the inauguration of Naftali Bennett's new government on Sunday, Israel is set to welcome its first ever deaf lawmaker to the Knesset. Yamina member of Knesset Shirley Pinto will replace Religious Services Minister Matan Kahana through the Norwegian law, which allows ministers to give up their positions in parliament in order for a different person to assume their role. Before taking up politics, Pinto was a social activist for deaf rights and spoke regularly on issues relating to disability and accessibility. After learning that she'd be sworn in as a new member of the Knesset, Pinto took to Facebook and wrote, "I promise to work for you, those who voted for me, and those who did not. We have a lot of work to do, and this is the beginning of a new path." On Monday, Defense Minister Benny Gantz submitted a proposal for a state commission of inquiry into the Mount Meron stampede, which left 45 dead and 150 others injured. Do you remember that? It was a tragedy that happened on April 30th, 2021. The previous government refused to approve an investigation into the ultra-Orthodox celebration, claiming an internal probe by the Religious Affairs Ministry would be sufficient enough. Gantz and the new government believe a more intensive investigation is necessary to avoid a repeat of the inadequate planning believed to be the cause of that stampede. If you don't remember, here's a refresh. Thousands of people were celebrating a holiday called Lag BaOmer on an Israeli mountaintop when the traffic got bottlenecked and a human stampede broke out. People panicked, and 45 people died, including Israelis and foreign nationals. 150 others were injured during this. There's still no clear reason for how this happened or who is actually at fault. Relations between Israel and Arab countries like the United Arab Emirates and the Kingdom of Bahrain are, as far as we can see, remaining stable after the new Israeli government was sworn in on Sunday. Both countries have congratulated Prime Minister Naftali Bennett and Foreign Minister Yair Lapid on their new terms. That's great because these normalization deals were very much created due to the former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's work. So he really brought all of this together. A conversation between Yair Lapid, Israel's new foreign affairs minister, and the UAE foreign affairs minister Abdullah Ben Zayed on Monday evening ended with both parties looking forward to working together toward increased peace in the Middle East. Lapid also highlighted his commitment to adding more Arab countries to the Abraham Accords, which saw Israel sign peace and normalization deals with several Arab countries, including Sudan and Morocco. Talks are also underway between Israel, the U.S., the UAE, and Bahrain to hold a ceremony marking the 1-year anniversary of the signing. Hey, I want to be invited to that. I want to go there as press. I'm going to try to make that happen, guys. I'm glad that we covered this story because I want to send out an email and say, hey, you should take Shanna Fuld, host of the Israel Daily News podcast, as press for this. That would be so cool, right? That would be very awesome for our organization. This story was too good for me to forego. In a press release on Friday, Hamas denounced U.S. Representative Ilhan Omar for equating what they deem the Palestinian resistance with the military actions of Israel and the United States. The organization cited the importance of describing things accurately in order to achieve a solution to the conflict. Omar's statements took place during a conversation between her and U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, in which she called for accountability for all groups committing crimes, including the U.S., Hamas, Israel, Afghanistan, and the Taliban. She clarified in a later statement that she was not morally comparing Hamas and the Taliban to the U.S. and Israel. I liked this story because I think it is amusing that Hamas, which is considered a terrorist group by Western democracies, asked Representative Omar to correctly portray them in her conversations, and especially because she's a staunch Palestinian supporter, I thought that it was amusing to see Hamas come after her in light of all that she does for the Palestinian community and all the attention that she brings. A Muslim EMT, and we'll name him here because we're proud of him, Mohammed Alian, helped save a man's life in Jerusalem when he was on his way to attend Friday prayers in the Beit Safafa area. While he was on his way, he received a notification of an emergency nearby. Within 2 minutes, Alian arrived on the scene to find a 60-year-old man in cardiac arrest. With the help of another volunteer and others at the scene, Alian worked tirelessly to resuscitate the man. Eventually, his pulse returned to normal, and the man was saved. Alian says it brought him joy that he was able to save a life. Yay, kudos! We've all got to take care of one another, no matter the religion, the race, the creed. In Judaism, we say that to save one life is like saving the world. Let's love each other, everybody. All right. Well, that is it for today's show. Today is Tuesday, June 15th, 2021. Tel Aviv has a low of 21 degrees Celsius and a high of 27 degrees. That's 70 degrees Fahrenheit for the low, going up to 80 degrees for the high. Subscribe to the Israel Daily News podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you're hearing it from. We are everywhere that podcasts are found. Don't forget to sign up to our Israel Weekly News Wrap. It's a newsletter with the top 5 stories coming out of Israel from throughout the week. It also has our investigations, interviews, and special reports with the Cliff Notes in there. Thank you to Brandon Karp and Sophia J. for some of today's political stories. Thank you to the loyal Benny Forstad, who is our cultural reporter. To Farah Fold, who's with our team as a business development intern for the summer. And Michelle Milner, who does social media for us and helps me out every day. I'll send you off today with Aneni Na by Kunda and Laor. These two are cousins who work together to produce meaningful music in Israel. Have a great and productive day.
Pumping this love from leva העולם beat א' ב' beat בפנן Deep inside the land of Zion, it's a dance designed to move everyone. So yalla kulam, put your worries aside. This beat is a sign, your body decides. Yalla kulam, we won't let them divide. Jerusalem sisters all on the same side.
Wherever you are, truth in you lies. Wherever you are, lose your disguise. Open your eyes, feel it inside you. Anedi na na ya, anedi na ya, anedi na na ya, ne. Anedi na na ya, anedi na ya, anedi na na ya, ne.
Deep in the dark, נדליק את הנר. שלהבת יא burning eternal flare. Jerusalem daughters, hands in the air. Jerusalem daughters, להתעורר. יאללה kulam, no fear in your eyes. Moving together are like multiply. Yalla kulam, we won't let them divide. Jerusalem people are